Place.
Yeah, that's great.
So Marty is from Climate Action Now, and our featured speaker for the evening.
I think that builds up expectations way too far.
Our guest, welcome guest.
Yeah, Climate Action Now is it's somewhere between an organization and a coalition, because we really take in many of the grassroots struggles that pop up around climate or the environment, and they get integrated into our work. And our steering committee is made up of people. What defines them is they're in charge of some form of work. So it's kind of an odd duck, but we found that it works very well.
Come sit down. That's all right. We just started.
And it was born in the back seat of my car as we were driving from one of John Weissman's July 4th picnics at Fred Rose's place back in 2012. When have y'all ever been to one of those picnics? They've been happening every year for a long time. And Susan Theberge and I said, did you know that Bill McKibben is coming to town in September? And I don't know who said, what is anybody doing about that? There's nothing happening around this horrible thing called climate change. Maybe we should do something. So we called a meeting, and 50, 60 people showed up. And we planned a conference for the day before the day after McKibben spoke in September of 2012. And over 200 people showed up to that, which indicated to us that, we weren't, this is not rocket science, that people are really interested in combating this horrible thing called climate change. And out of that came this both very complex and very dynamic organization called Climate Action Now, which focuses, and I think that it's very important for us to define it in this way. It focuses on climate justice. A lot of other organizations before us, and some still after us, although it's becoming recognized that this is what we have to do in order to fight climate change, to get everybody united. That if you're going to have to change everything, which you do in order to fight climate change, then you have to change also the social structure, and the economic structure, so that you fight against racism, classism, sexism, and all those things that are preventing people from having either a decent life or access to democratic rights. And if you do that, since we're already getting at the roots of so much, it's sort of like we might as well do that anyway. Although obviously you all know how hard that is, so that's kind of a silly statement, I realize. But it is so hard to push back against the monopolies around climate change, and climate change disproportionately affects the poor and people of color, both in this country and around the world, and women, that we've got to take on the whole shebang if we are going to get enough people together to do the kind of work that we do. We've got to go to a zero carbon society, and we have to have a democratic and socially just society, and work for that in the process. And in order to do that, we have to join forces with the people that will benefit from all of that. And so environmentalism can no longer afford to be a white middle class or upper middle class movement. And we've tried to use that as our guidepost, as our guiding light for what we do. And one of the things that marked that decision was our second conference ever was in Springfield after Michael Ann Busey at the first conference said, "Why aren't you doing this in Springfield?" So we did. A year later, we held a climate justice conference in Springfield, and again got about 200 people, and it was much more diverse. And out of that was born the Springfield Climate Justice Coalition. I'm just going to go through. Our work is sometimes dizzying in its expanse, and so I had to write it down. Okay, so excuse me for reading sometimes, because a lot of this stuff I don't do, but other people do. And the very first thing that I think you need to know about are three events that are coming up soon. They came out of, we have a incredibly active legislative committee, and they set up three candidate forums. I think there are now 4 since Stan's seat became open. Well, it was sort of open before. That's the wrong way of putting it, because Chelsea was running against Stan. But now there are 4 candidate forums, and I just wanted, and it will focus on the relationship, the views of the candidates vis-a-vis climate change, and that is what, and the environment, and that is what the questions are being fed to the candidates about. But I wanted to let you know, the first one, tell me, do you already know about these or no?
I know about them.
Okay. The first one is on May 20th, which is coming up soon. It's this Sunday, and it's at the Amherst Unitarian Society, and that's for 3rd Hampshire District. That's Solomon's seat. Wednesday, May 23rd, is in Deerfield at Frontier Regional for the 1st Franklin District, which is, brain burp. What's his name? Steve Kulik.
Steve Kulik.
Steve Kulik's seat. And Tuesday, June 5th, is in Florence for Peter Kokut's seat, the 1st Hampshire District. So all of these are at 7 o'clock, and I really hope that if those affect any of you, I hope that you're there and can. I don't know how they're being set up, to be very honest with you. Like I said, that's not where I spend most of my time, and so I don't know how much floor time people are going to get, people in the audience are going to be able to get. But it would be good if anybody, if these are affecting you, please come out. That very good legislative team developed something called a 12-point plan about a year and a half ago that focused on the different aspects of legislation that's necessary to make the transition to a zero carbon economy. And it was, I believe this had not started, I think this was really given the push by the Trump election, although it may have been moving before, because we've been active with the state legislature. But what became very clear to everybody was that there was absolutely no hope in Washington of getting any climate work done. So we were going to have to go through the municipalities and the state if we're going to get anything done.
So Marty, these 12 points are state bills.
They're different. There's so many bills that are included on the 12 points are the different areas that we are attacking. Okay, and please look on our website, which is www.climateactionnowma. I believe that's correct. I'll look it up before we leave. It's right. .org. I'll make sure that I'm right about that. And look for the 12-point plan, because it's very comprehensive. It gets into RPSs and net metering and electric vehicles and plug-ins and not building new pipelines, no new pipeline, pipeline taxes, reforming the DPU, just a gazillion things that you and I probably wouldn't have thought of. But have been thought of by our state reps and senators, which is really good. I mean, there's just a what we would say a shitload of. Excuse me, take that off. Sorry.
This is a family show here, Marty.
That's right.
Tech talk.
Right. Incredibly good legislation before the legislature, and what we know now is. Most of it, no matter how hard you bat your head against the wall, doesn't get passed. No matter how much great the support is. And we're really, that has been a massive education for us, which is why I think that the legislative committee then said, we've really got to get into the arena of making climate an issue in all the elections as well. Because we are in a climate emergency. We have so little time to stop spewing greenhouse gases. We must do it. 2050 is way too long. Some people say we're already past the point. But that's argued. And we have no choice but to do everything that we possibly can to cut greenhouse gas emissions to zero.
Your basis for where we are now are using the studies by 350.org.
Oh no, by using regular scientific studies those are the ones I read.
Supposedly 350, that number 350 has some scientific basis. Right?
Yeah, we'll never get there. I think Bill McKibben, who created 350.org, will agree, or if we do it, will be after our grandchildren are dead. Okay, we are at 410 right now, and continue to rise, and what is in the atmosphere now has its effect on the temperatures for climate 30 years from now.
But 350 was his best
Yeah.
guess.
And where we could be to have a livable planet.
And we need the studies over time to iteratively correct it as we go along. That maybe the number should have been 250 or 550 or whatever. We need to refine those numbers.
Yeah, I think that it's not those numbers that need how should I say this? We have the knowledge that we have to cut greenhouse gas emissions to zero. That's what we know. And we need to do it absolutely as soon as possible. And we still, because of the greenhouse gases that are already in the atmosphere now, that are tripping links to spirals of more greenhouse gases, we may be already too late for that reason. I mean, the tundra is melting. The albedo effect, the tundra and the Arctic Circle and below is melting. The glaciers are melting in Greenland and Antarctica. The ice in the Arctic Ocean is melting, so there's no more albedo effect. It's warmer in the Arctic than it's ever been. The ocean is too full of acid, so that it's now essentially rejecting the carbon dioxide that it used to create a sink for. There are so many things happening indicating that we may be into runaway global warming, so that what we put in there, even if we stop, what we put in the atmosphere, even if we stop, it may not make a difference because the processes are already going without us. So I hate to be, this is what all the scientists are saying, that we may have passed that.
If the train left the station, you could argue, then why bother at all?
Well, because we have to save what's left. I think there's no planet B. We have to do everything we possibly can. And that's why we say in Climate Action Now, not only climate justice, but it is a climate emergency. And we cannot wait to act. And we also say, we get into these struggles online on Facebook and all over the place about what do we have to do? And our answer from Climate Action Now is everything and anything. It has to be on the legislative, if we can do it federally, that's the best. Internationally, it's not, so federally is not the best. Internationally is the best, because that can do it quicker. But obviously federally, if we could do anything, that would be marvelous. But if we can't, then we make Massachusetts a model. We do it here and make Massachusetts a model, knowing that we are a small state, and so our actual contribution to greenhouse gases is not that great. But still, if we are a model, even though we aren't California, we may push somebody else into showing them that it's cheaper, the air is cleaner, all those things, and they can do it too. Maybe Ohio, who knows, that's where I'm from. So that's the way that we're going, and because we're anything and everything, that sort of tells you what's on our website too. It's sort of anything and everything. Back to the legislative, we're working with Mass Power Forward, which is a statewide coalition of climate change groups, the big boys, but we have a lot of, because we have so much grassroots identification, we have a lot of pull with them, and they are now working to get 5 bills. I make my calls to DeLeo every week, asking them about to increase the renewable portfolio standard to 3% per year, reform the Department of Public Utilities, implement solar policies to benefit low-income communities, codify the environmental justice regulations from the Patrick administration, and setting new emission standards for 2030 and 2040 under the Global Warming Solutions Act. And those are the 5 that we're concentrating on right now. There was a great thing that happened recently, which was the Senate Omnibus Energy Bill, which has within it a carbon pricing mechanism, which is our next group, which is, for reasons that I think have to do with personalities, is different than our regular legislative group. We have a carbon pricing group too that works with, is it CL, what is it, CCL, what is it called? Anyway, it works with statewide carbon pricing organizations. And within that new Senate Omnibus bill, there is a wonderful carbon pricing, very progressive bill that ensures that the heavy lifting is done by the rich, not the poor, and that money goes back to communities to fund renewable energy and transportation, public transportation. So that one, and we're hoping to push the House to do the same.
Has that passed the Senate?
No, it has not passed the Senate. It was, and I'll get back to you about where it is right now, okay?
Okay.
Let's see. So carbon pricing. And we're working in cities. In Northampton, we passed a 100% renewable energy bill. It's not an ordinance, it's a resolution. But the councilors are taking it very seriously, and we're doing some of our work around the pipeline, which I'll talk about later, that the pipeline that Columbia Gas is proposing to come off to go to Holyoke, and I'll get into that more deeply. That resolution means something to these councilors, and so we are getting pushback to the fossil fuel companies for their plans for development of new fossil fuel infrastructure. Let's see. Oh, I know that the Amherst Zero, who's from Amherst? Anybody from Amherst? You know about the Zero Net Energy building thing, which is really very frontline. making sure that all new municipal buildings make as much energy as they use, which is what we have to fight for in all buildings. But to put it, this is an ordinance. This is not a resolution. This is not like our wimpy little resolutions in Northampton. And they're working very hard to implement it now. And Climate Action Now and Mothers Out Front are working with them. Then there's, we have a solar low income project called Raise the Valley, where we find places, rooftops to site solar. It doesn't have to be rooftops, also can be parking lots and the like. And also specifically sell that solar at reduced rates to low-income communities. It's through a federal grant that Adele Franks, who lives here in Northampton, got. And that is winding up right now. She's been doing a lot of work in Springfield. And then another really interesting thing that is also happening, coming out of our work, it's something called Community Choice Energy. Who has heard of that? Anybody? It means what they have put together, the towns of Northampton, Amherst, and Pelham, to together buy electricity from renewable sources that can be sited in our towns so that we create jobs here rather than in Texas with wind farms, and also can identify areas that need more work on energy efficiency. It means taking back to the municipalities our electricity, our grid, okay? And that is going ahead in those three towns who are going to become a buying unit.
What was the third town? Amherst, Pelham, and
Northampton.
Yeah.
I mentioned briefly the Springfield Climate Justice Coalition. Out of that second conference, which I think was in 2013, we worked very hard to pass a resolution through the City Council unanimously to get a climate action plan, which we said needed to be a climate justice plan. It was wonderful. It was a great campaign, and then Mayor Sarno turned his back on it. We finally are to the stage where we have budgeted a half a person to put together that office. We need a whole person, and even that half a person is not dedicated, in talking to her, is not dedicated to the job of sustainability in Springfield. So it's a constant fight in Springfield, but it's a coalition of over 43 groups, and we're working very hard to get.
Is Sarno the problem there? I mean, is the city council with you, or is
The
it
city council is with us.
So
They passed it unanimously.
So Sarno
And
was the
Sarno
problem.
would not budget it. It's a very in Springfield, and so city council can say whatever it wants, but unless it's budgeted, and that's done by the mayor, it's not done by city council, it doesn't happen. And so we're still fighting for that. We're also involved in the Poor People's Campaign. This is an outgrowth of struggles against pipelines. You all know that we fought successfully against the Northeast Direct Pipeline, which you guys up in the Northwest
Went right
know
through our middle of our
all-
town.
all
Right through the middle of
about,
our town.
yeah.
Would have gone right
Yeah, it
through
was
the
an
middle of our town.
amazing success, and just was a wonderful grassroots campaign that succeeded. We had another grassroots campaign down in Sandusfield that did not succeed. It was for a pipeline that was to be, what was it called? Oh, gracious.
The Connecticut extension or
Thank
some
you,
such
yes
thing.
it is. And it was to have stored natural gas rather than taking it to new places. unlike the NED. And it went through pristine state forest,
Article 97.
violated Article 97, and they won anyway. In the process of that, one of the things that it did violate as well, besides state law, was the rights of Native Americans and their religious sites that we call sacred stones, and they call sacred stones. They are sites where some of them have been there for millennia, probably, where Native Americans have worshipped and considered to be their own. And in the Otis State Forest struggle, the pipeline company just tore them apart.
78 of them, I think.
Thank you very much. You could be doing this part
No,
for
I
me.
could not.
Thank you. Without FERC even batting an eye. FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that is against federal law, and we have found with the Narragansett tribe a lawyer who's willing to file in federal court for the rights of the Narragansett tribe, and probably it will eventually apply to all tribes the right to sacred sites in the face of the development of fossil fuel infrastructure, but probably can be used in the face of parking lots and Walmarts. But in specific, this is focused on fossil fuel infrastructure, which is what they were trying to build there. And so that really is in the fundraising phase, and we're almost there. And that was initiated by Ken with the Narragansett tribe, and we're almost there. Oh, finally, my part. What I'm working on mainly right now is in Northampton. Who knows about the Columbia Reliability Project? The pipeline that is to come up from Agawam to Holyoke. And we are the excuse, by we I mean Northampton and East Hampton. We are the excuse for it because we take gas off of the Northampton lateral that feeds us, but also feeds Holyoke. And they say there just is not enough capacity in that Northampton lateral, so we've got to build a new pipeline. The problem is climate change, okay? We cannot be investing at all in new fossil fuel infrastructure. It is really possible that there may be problems with capacity on the very coldest days of the year, those 2, 3, or 4 days of the year. They probably do have troubles, but we're saying there has to be another alternative to this. Because once you build the pipeline, it means more gas. More gas means more gas leaked, and more gas burned, and more climate change. So we say, our position is we do not want that pipeline. And what we are doing is twofold, sort of threefold. One, we're fighting it directly through the city, through Northampton, East Hampton, Holyoke, Springfield, West Springfield, Long Meadow, Agawam if we can find people. We haven't been able to there. But we have groups set up in each of these towns. And what we're doing in Northampton is we're saying we're the excuse here. Columbia Gas has said that there's so little gas pipeline capacity that we're going to put a moratorium on you guys. They said this 4 years ago. And there are going to be no new gas hookups.
They already have.
Yeah, they did this in 2014. Yeah, no new gas hookups, no new gas expansions. And and everybody said, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. But yet development happened anyway in Northampton.
There's a way around it.
Yeah, anyway, well, let me go ahead, okay? Because we're already fully onto this. And what we're doing is saying,